Hello and welcome to another MYPATH podcast. I'm Lee, a careers practitioner for MYPATH, and I'm your host. Today we have the lovely Zoe Harrington who's joined us. Zoe, thank you for coming in. Appreciate your time. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good. Thank you for coming in, Zoe. So you won't have seen any of our podcasts yet, Zoe, because we've not quite released any. However, I know we've spoken off camera. Our objective today and our objective with this podcast is to reach out mainly to Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4 students to help them understand, I think, two key areas, really. One, are careers always linear? So, do we zigzag across careers? But also the importance of transferability and the skills. How can we transfer our skills from, one environment to another? So I'm hoping you can really support us with that today.
I hope so.
Thank you very much.
Give it a shot.
Thank you, Zoe. Okay, so Zoe, what we're going to do first, I just want to kind of let the audience know who you are. So by that, I mean you're going to let them know who you are. Okay. So Zoe, tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, where you grew up, and I suppose your initial kind of movement into careers.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm Zoe Harrington. I grew up in a tiny little town called Lichfield in Staffordshire. And then I suppose my first career move was into retail management. But that's where I started, not where I ended. So I'm currently a customer success manager, which has lots of transferable skills, which I learnt during my time in retail. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. So Zoe, what I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of come back a couple of steps first. So talk me through your education. So what I mean by that is let's go with secondary, because a lot of our listeners will be, perhaps sitting their GCSEs. So how did you do at school with your GCSEs?
They were very hard for me, so I put a lot of pressure on myself, but GCSEs, academic skills, didn't come natural to me whatsoever.
Okay.
And I didn't know why. I knew I had information in my head. I knew how I wanted to communicate it, but on paper it just wasn't coming out. And back then we didn't have things like dyslexia testing at high school. It just wasn't available. And so I was always in bottom English, bottom maths, bottom science. And in those classes, as some might know, they are quite disruptive. You don't get the attention that you need. And you can get lost. So I did feel very much written off, like, oh, Zoe's not going to be able to get her GCSEs. What does next steps look like? Is she going to go to university? Probably not. So, and I felt like I had that from teachers, parents, not a lot of ambition. It was just like, oh, maybe Zoe will marry good. And honestly, that's how I felt. And you kind of believe that. So for me, as a determined person I wanted to prove everybody wrong. So I did get extra help. I had tuition for maths. I had some support with English. But I think a lot of this was just personality. I did just want to prove everybody wrong that I could do it because I knew it. I knew what people were talking about. I just couldn't put it down onto paper very well. So I didn't have any extra time given to me. I had to just suffer and try and do it. But I did manage to get all my C's in GCSEs. And then I got an A star in art and graphic design. So I was pretty much just tunnel visioned into you're creative, you're great at sports, but what are you going to do with that as a career? So I never envisioned myself at all to work in an office, to work with computers or write things or look at contracts. None of that wasn't even reachable for me.
And we'll get to that in terms of your end destination. So that's really powerful, what you've just said there, Zoe. And it sounds like that was quite a tough time for you, very emotive for you. So would you say to me that it was grit and determination and passion that really pushed you to get to those C's in the end? If you had accepted what other people were saying, would we have kind of tailed off and not got those C's? What was the skill there that you had?
It's very, very interesting because I think a lot of it is to do with psychological and so many layers go into it, like birth order. I'm the youngest. Youngest are known for being a bit more determined or scrappy, resourceful, which I feel I am. And it is a personality trait. Like I genuinely just wanted to prove people wrong and that I could do it. In fact, my mom was only talking about that this morning, about when I was 2.5 and I did something wrong and I just kept getting up to do it again and again and again until I did it. So it is kind of like a personality trait.
And you are very determined as a person.
As a person to do it. And it's just, there's a conscious complex I think I have about myself as well, where I don't want people to look at me and think I'm less than or I'm not capable, because in my brain, like up here in my own head, I know I am.
Yeah.
So I always wanted to not only prove it to others, but also like prove it to myself. Yeah. So I had to achieve just so I could have that self-validation to myself that I am not less than.
And you proved that with your GCSEs. Yeah. And then you moved on to college, I assume. So you spoke about your creativity, but you still passed. Pass being the C plus at the time. Our students will probably know that as 4s or 5s. So what did you do at the age of 16 to 18? So
again, back then, I think there was some miseducation around what was best for next steps. So I went to sixth form. Was that the right move? I don't know. But from parents and again teachers, it was very much the seen thing to do.
And was that picking 3 A levels?
Picking 3 A levels or 4, but I think I only picked 3. Okay. I kind of managed my own expectations for what I wanted to do. And they were art, graphic design and general studies. What are you going to do with those?
But again, you was kind of tapping into your creativity there, weren't you?
Yeah, because that's kind of what I was told you were good at, and that's what you should go and explore. And it was very much nothing linked to careers. It was just like, do what you're good at. And what I would like to challenge is, that's fine. Academically, I wasn't great at English or maths, and maybe I was naturally better at drawing and sport. But as a person, I have so many other soft skills that are desirable in the workplace that have nothing to do with art or sports or maths or English, but you need them to succeed in the workplace. And that was all very much ignored, and I think that is being more surfaced today.
Yeah, so you're talking, and we won't give away ages, Zoe, but you're probably talking 20-ish years ago.
Yeah.
So times have moved on, and I know we're from the same era, so no judgments there. So you did your A-levels, and what was the next steps after that?
So again, next steps was you've got to go to university, Zoe.
Okay.
Because if you went to college or you didn't go, you're not going to be earning a decent salary. It was very much, again, seen as a thing to do, regardless if it was right for me.
And that is a really interesting point. I know that we've spoken before around kind of Gatsby benchmarks and, you know, the importance of exposing children to all different pathways. And I think I will completely agree with you that 20-ish years ago, it was kind of like, well, you know, if you are doing your A-levels, then you go to university. Yeah. You know, why would you do A-levels if you're not going to university? Yeah. However, things appear to be changing, but we were part of that era that when that wasn't the case. So you did go to university, and what did you study there?
And you know what, thinking about going to university, there was no conversations around, if you went and studied this, these are the type of job outputs you're going to get from it.
Yeah, so as in destination.
Yeah, it was like you're just going for the sake of going.
I'm so glad you're saying this, because I often speak to students about how I wish we had the resources available to us that they now have to them. And we talk so much about destinations and looking at the alumni and where people, if they've studied that course, what have they gone on to do? Yeah. And I don't feel like we had that.
No.
And I think our students are quite fortunate that they do have that, because it really means you can map out where you want to go, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would argue there's too much choice, and then a young person doesn't know what's the right choice. Whereas I feel I had very limited options.
Right. Okay. So what were they? What was that option or options?
The option was you go to university. There wasn't even a question of not going to university. No, it was expected of me to go to university, and you go to university and then you figure out a career pipeline after it. Yeah. And I don't even remember at university having anyone say, oh, careers fairs are coming around, or employers are coming in to like look at next gen pipe coming through. Yeah. There was absolutely nothing.
No.
It was, you went, had a great time, by the way, and got a degree, and I got a good degree, but I haven't applied that discipline in any of my careers. No. And while some of it is transferable, but did that set me up to the work environment? Probably not. In honesty, it didn't teach me, you know, handing in your assignment on time. You could have, that is your personality. Like I never handed in homework late. Again, it was me wanting to self-prove who I am, that I'm not less than. So everything was always handed in on time. It didn't teach me work-life balance. like managing a part-time job. I had a part-time job when I was 16. So I was doing that at sixth form. So I really argue it didn't, I don't think it added any value to me going into a career by going to university. It didn't set me up for success.
But you had a degree.
But I had a degree and I was
that
told.
supports with potentially being shortlisted for interviews.
Yes, I was told it was going to give you a foot in the door.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what degree you had, just having a degree showed you were disciplined. You could manage work. You could manage independent living.
It's an interesting point and obviously very, very subjective, isn't it? What degree did you do, Zoe?
Textile design with retail management. So I actually did do retail management.
Okay, so with textile design and retail management, what did you set out to do? When you started coming towards the end of your degree, and you may not have had much careers advice at that time because things were different, what was the vision? Because I'm really interested in knowing what you wanted to do and then get into what you do now. Because I know that we've spoken a few times in the past and you're doing very, very well with your career, very successful, and we will get to that point. But you didn't set out for this particular sector, did you? If I remember right.
Not, no,
so what did you set out to do post-university? So 21, 22 years old, what was the journey?
So originally, for some reason, I wanted to be a primary school teacher. That's what I had in my head. And I tried to get into multiple different universities and I didn't get the point. So I didn't make the cut, basically. So I went through clearing. I don't know if you've had to experience that, but you're basically just calling around loads of universities, seeing what courses they have on offer, and you pick it.
Yeah.
I had never touched a sewing machine in my life. And my first day at university, you were on a sewing machine. So the degree I went in to do was just for the doing a degree.
Right, okay.
I had no real vision of what I wanted to achieve at the end of those 3 years at all. It was like I was just told you need to go to university.
So this is very honest of you, so thank you for being so open. And this is really good material for our audience. It's really important that they hear about different journeys to success. So what did you do then after university? Because obviously it's all of a sudden it's like, whoa, okay, I've graduated, job, work, what did you do?
So for my part-time work, I always worked in retail. So I started off as a junior and a hairdresser, sweeping hair, washing hair, making cups of tea. It's very, very chatty. And I loved doing that, answering the phone. And I also worked for my dad in a little sweet shop and ice cream. And what I really loved about it was you watched the day go by. You saw life happening. You weren't boxed off in an office. Every day was slightly different.
So you liked working with people?
With people.
People watching?
Yeah, very much so.
Okay.
And it was just exciting when you got busy, figuring things out. So an opportunity came up at Selfridges in Birmingham, because I went to university in Birmingham. And that came up. And it was just wild. When I look back on it, I had no idea how intense it would be. It was an assessment day. So those, So again, I had
an assessment day for a
for
job
a retail,
in retail.
yeah.
That, I mean,
for
that's
minimum
not
wage, by the way.
Yeah, that's not something you hear of, really, is it? Unless it's like the more senior positions.
Yeah, and
is this a senior position?
No, it wasn't. It was vol hiring for Christmas, for seasonal work.
Right, okay, got you.
But it was this massive assessment day of, you go in, you're shuffled along. I had an interview. I had done zero preparation because I just generally didn't know. I just thought I was going to have a chat with somebody like yourself. And it was this whole massive thing in a hotel. And then we did like a fake shop where you had to sell stuff to people coming in. You had a brief, somebody had an allergy, because it was the food department. And you had to sell according to that. And I was successful and I got the job. And that did open my eyes up to bigger opportunities, because I had gone from very much an independent sweet shop, which my dad runs, and then like the hairdressers 2 shops down.
And Selfridges is a
and
big,
it was
big in the boring,
big,
isn't it?
and it was exciting.
And a lot of high-end shopping as well. So you're meeting a real diverse range of customers, I'd imagine.
Girls Aloud came in, Take That came in.
Customers won't know who, the audience won't know who they are.
You won't, well, Google it.
So Zoe, you spent some time in Selfridges.
Yeah.
So I would imagine you really started to kind of develop some more skills there in terms of, communicating with parents, communicating with customers.
Yes.
What came after that? What came after Selfridges?
I was actually headhunted. So first of all, Selfridges had an excellent training program. Okay. I learned a lot about values, retail psychology, shopping habits.
Yep.
All those great things. And they had a grad program, actually. And I was always curious how you got onto that. I would have loved the opportunity to have done that. I very much thought this is a place I can grow, thrive, and move up. And then it became to a point where I realised for me to get to the next level, like a manager level, somebody needs to leave. So, and that wasn't happening.
No, and you weren't willing to wait.
No.
Going back to your determination.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was like, how can I move up the ladder? How can I do that? So anyway, just by chance, a franchise company was looking around and they were served by me, and I must have been very impressed.
So almost like a secret shopper.
Almost like a secret, which I always did very well in, by the way. So these two guys, startup company, like franchise for this milkshake confectionery company, and they asked me to come down for an interview with them down in Brighton, so miles away. I had
You know what's really interesting about that? You know, I talk to students a lot about this. That you know, every day you're writing your CV, every interaction you're having,
100%.
You know, you're developing your CV, and you know, if you were having an off day and you didn't serve with such professionalism that day, you may not have got headhunted.
Exactly.
And obviously, you know, the journey now continues. Yeah. So you get headhunted. You're supporting with these franchises.
Yeah, I was a store. Well, I was recruited as a store manager, which is what I wanted. That was the goal at the time. I wanted to operate a shop. I knew I had the skills and the ability to do it. So I moved down to Brighton, and then it became very apparent very quickly that actually they didn't have a shop open yet. So we launched their first one in Bluewater, Kent. That was their flagship shop. And very quickly after that, the success of that, we rapidly grew with a very small team, opening them up in Leicester, Birmingham, Liverpool 1, Tunbridge Wells, Southampton. So
does this mean you went from being, what you thought was going to be a store manager, to actually you are helping to set up a big operation, big national firm?
Yeah, and my job quickly became recruitment. I went and recruited for each location. So you kind of then
evolved into this role naturally,
Yeah, and I loved it, right? Because I love being around people.
Yeah.
So it was fun and exciting. Got to travel the UK, which I never had the opportunity to do before. And I was responsible for recruiting store managers, assistant store managers, supervisors, and the shop floor. And then I would stay on site and train them. So again, using a lot of the skills I learned from Selfridges with their great training program.
But also going back to your early days in the sweet store.
That's right, yeah. And I think a lot of my work ethic came from that. So my dad was a self-made man, ran many businesses, and then the sweet shop is a hobby for him. Yeah. But learning that from such a young age and being around that environment, you knew how important every penny was coming in, every sale. Yeah. And you can apply that to everything. I feel like I've got very good commercial awareness, regardless if you're not out on the front selling or being a sales assistant. How do you add value and how do you drive revenue to the bottom line of whatever business you're doing? It's important to know that, I think.
These kind of values and skills were embedded very early
on.
And at the time, you probably wouldn't have realised it was happening because it was just where you were with your family at the time.
Just grew up in that environment.
It's amazing. How life kind of just takes you in different directions.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So, Zoe, you're supporting with the setting up of various confectionery shops.
Yeah.
Milkshake shops.
Yeah.
Is that the correct phrase?
London, Westfield.
So how long did you spend at this organisation? What happened after that?
So I was there for probably about 4 years, and it was just a whirlwind. So not only was it recruitment, it was looking at things logistically as well. Yeah. So it was like, we've had a really great day at Bluewater. Actually, the shop size wasn't big enough to hold the capacity of the ice cream and the milk needed for the milkshakes. And you just think, what a wild problem to have. It's like, we need more milk, we need more ice cream. So then you're looking at expanding. So when you're looking at sites, I was very much involved in those operations, like where's the storeroom? And it kind of built this bigger picture of what I thought would be area manager responsibility. Because again, thinking, well, where can I go from here? I can't continuously be driving up and down the country recruiting. As fun as it was, it's like, to stabilise myself, what's next? So area manager was something that I thought would be on my radar, but it wasn't. So that company did come to a natural end. Okay. And then I found a great opportunity with Krispy Kreme.
Okay. So on to Krispy Kreme?
On to Krispy Kreme. And I was a store manager there.
Okay, well.
And I loved that shop like it was my own shop. Had so much pride in selling those donuts and the staff.
They are nice. They are nice.
And I learned some new tricks there. So with that one became a lot more HR management, disciplinary, looking at the wider picture, how your bottom line, again, massively contributes to a bigger picture there. And I stayed there maybe only for a couple of years. And it was honestly, when I look back at some of my careers, that was a highlight for me.
Oh, good.
It was a fun job to have.
So at this point, I'm guessing, are we mid to late 20s?
Mid-20s.
Mid-20s. So what comes next?
What comes next? Do you want to know what came next?
Absolutely.
Oh, I met a boy and fell in love.
Did you? Okay. And where did that take you?
It took me to Canada.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Careers are not always linear, right?
Not always linear. You follow your heart.
So what sort of work did you do in Canada?
So I used my transferable skills. Whilst retail was obviously a natural choice,
Yeah.
I found it hard having a British CV, not a resume, getting a job. I did actually find it quite hard. So they have a massive chain over there called Tim Hortons, which is they're over here now.
There's one not too far from where we sat now at Foss Park.
There we go.
Yeah.
I like to describe them as the Canadian Greggs.
Right, okay. Oh, I thought it was a bit more upmarket than that. Although, to be fair, Greggs is quite upmarket these days, isn't it?
Well,
it's really progressing well. Yeah.
So I started there on the drive-through, which I've never worked on a drive-through before, but I loved it.
Yeah.
And again, it was just you had to go down a few steps to climb the ladder back up again.
Yeah.
I moved to a different country, different values, different work ethics, different. Even though we spoke the same language, everything was different.
Yeah.
Customer service is so different over there. So
What do
much
you mean
more.
by that?
So much more is expected from you.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. And is that why it's
an industry?
Tip related as well in Canada? I know it is massive in America, isn't it?
Yes,
right.
Very much.
So that's how you earn your money.
Yes, and it is an industry in itself. So I started there, and again, it was just something to get my foot in the door.
Yeah.
So I was not there very long at all, and just coincidentally, friends that I made over there. There was a new restaurant being launched, and I mean a massive restaurant, like Selfridges size, 3 levels, big thing. And the general manager of that, again, just saw me serving at Tim Hortons, approached me and was like, I think you're going to do really well here. I would love to recruit you as a server.
So you're headhunted again.
So
that's twice, isn't it?
Yeah, just
based
random.
on face-to-face customer service.
That's right, yeah. Sell yourself wherever you go.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to actually start as a server. I've never waitressed a day in my life. I've never carried pints on a tray. I've never ran food. So, again, managing my own expectations. Somebody was so excited to have me go work in their establishment, and I didn't think I could deliver. So I was like, I don't think that's the role for me. But what they did have was a hostess role. So that's you greet people when they come in, and you are responsible for allocating them a table.
Yeah.
And what people don't realise is that is a big operation. When you've got 3 floors, you are controlling the flow of traffic.
Yeah.
You can't obviously what we would call double seat somebody. So you sit a family down in this service section, and then if you sat somebody else down straight away, you missed a rotation, and then this person becomes what we would call weeded, too busy to manage that. So you would have to really control the flow of traffic. So you had to strategically place people. You had to we called it thin slicing. So when anyone came through the door, you had to quickly assess body language and determine where they're best sat in the restaurant. Is it the bar? Is it the cocktail area? Is it the family section?
Right.
Do they want somewhere quiet? And you have to do all this without asking a question. There's lots of subtle cues you can pick up on, which I think naturally, again, going back to like my superpower of being dyslexic, you're more in tune to that because you're reading people's information in a different way.
Right, okay.
So again, I was very good at doing that and like teaching the younger people what to do, because to be a server, you needed to be 19, so everybody started as a hostess or a busser running the food. The other massive part of being a hostess operationally is that how quick you seat people is how quick the servers would come over and then how quick they would input food into the till. So now you have another problem. You're flooding the kitchen with too many orders.
Right.
So everything you did from the moment you open the door had an impact on how
Yeah.
successful that afternoon was going to be at the restaurant.
And I would imagine that customers are none the wiser. That any
None
of
of
this
the
is
wiser
going on.
that's
They just want a nice
happening, yeah.
experience, don't they?
Yeah, yeah.
So loads and loads of skills that you had to manage to all at once to make that experience happy and successful for the customers. Where did you go after that?
So I progressed there. I became hostess manager. Then I moved to service manager. So now I was, even though I never ran a plate of food in my life, I was now managing people that were doing it.
Yeah.
And that's hard, right? Because I wanted the staff to believe in me. I wanted them to be like, I knew what I was talking about. How am I meant to coach and guide them or write them up for not doing something I couldn't do myself?
Yeah.
I never wanted to be that person. No. So I, to earn their trust and to earn my own ability, I did get stuck in. I went and did some kitchen shifts.
Yeah.
I went and ran food. I learned how to carry 3 plates. Not very well, but
yeah, that was
the
that
thing.
was a rite of passage.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing that gave me respect in the role was that they saw me try and do it. So I could, yes, exactly. I was willing to roll my sleeves up and get involved.
She's walked these corridors.
Exactly.
So you become more senior there. What's next?
Yes. What's next? I was there for quite a while, actually. And I really enjoyed that role. Again, lots of variety, lots of different skills being used. Had to manage rotas, stock intake, people calling in sick, finding cover, again, to make the operation go as smooth as possible. And then obviously we all know I moved there for love. So then we had started a family. So and my daughter was born.
So I would imagine naturally you spent a little bit less time at work.
I had
raising the children with your husband. And let's fast forward a little bit. So you then move, will I call it home or back to the UK?
We moved home. So having a baby changed my perspective massively on what do I need from life? What do I need from a job?
Yeah.
Working retail and hospitality, you do not get 2 days off in a row.
No.
You
Shifts.
do not get weekends off. No. You are working shifts. You are working earlies, mids or nights. Does not work for family life. You don't get bank holidays off.
No.
So how am I meant to operate being a mom, being the mom I wanted to be to my children? And then the stark reality dropped of, I'm going to need an office job. And
that was something I think, if we go right back to the start of your journey, that's something perhaps you would feel uncomfortable with?
Yes, massively.
Okay.
Because I had this preconception that you're stuck in a stuffy office where you have to be polished and you sit by the same person 5 days a week, and it's very repetitive, very mundane, very admin heavy. I couldn't spell very good. And I was like, who is going to hire me? And now I've got used to a certain salary and managing people and thriving doing that. No, who's going to hire me?
Who did hire you?
Who did hire me?
Where did
City and Guilds hired me.
Yeah. So education.
Was
that kind of your first step into the education sector?
Yeah, absolutely, actually. Yeah. And that was, again, just... that was through people I knew. It was my sister-in-law. She still works there. She introduced me into endpoint assessment, so EPA apprenticeships.
Yeah.
So when I first walked in for my interview, I was very shocked at how quiet it was. So I was gone from this restaurant industry of loud music playing, chefs shouting in the background. You're wearing an earpiece of like too many people are walking through the front door. Or you need a refund on table 81. To this environment of just stillness. And I was like, this is not for me.
But you had to adapt.
I had to change. Yes, I had to adapt and change because my family was changing. My situations were changing. So I did the interview, did really well. Again, had to take a few steps down. So now I'm going as entry level again. Once I've been in a management position, I've, put your pride aside. So I started just doing entry level role of EPA coordinator.
Okay.
And then within 6 months, I got promoted to team leader. So I'm like, actually,
this is all right.
This is all right. Because in the booking team, so I was in the endpoint assessment booking team, and it was all about how many bookings you make a week, because we need to fulfill a quota a month. So how many can you book? How many can you fulfill? And I started looking at as average transaction values and your sales targets. it was so similar,
Yeah.
and I had no idea it was going to be so similar. So instead of managing like your sales, I was managing the bookings.
Yeah.
It was just changing the numbers. There was just no pound sign in front of it,
Right,
but there was something to like drive for.
So there were parallels.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And how you manage a team doesn't change.
No.
You're just looking at people's strengths, weaknesses, how can we work together, building those relationships and the trust to achieve the outcomes that you need.
So you've had a number of positions really then where you've had big teams to manage, you know? And would Zoe of 16-year-old thought she could do that at the time?
No, absolutely not.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It is.
When you really reflect and dig deep. You moved on from City and Guilds,
Yes.
and I believe this is where we are now.
Yes.
So how did you move on from being, a team leader there? How did that come about? And please do tell us about your current role.
Thank you.
And I know that's how we've connected through your current role. So what do you now do, Zoe?
So I'm now a customer success manager. So that heavily involves working with people, but the reality is it's like an account manager role with the technical aspect. So I work with a HR tech company and I manage the platform for our clients. So our clients that purchase the platform will come and sit with me, and then I nurture the account. So I really have to make sure that each client is getting their return on investment, that they've invested in this product. It's doing what it says it should do. We're looking creatively, working together in collaboration and a true partnership.
Yeah.
Like I genuinely feel I am an extension of all my clients' teams because we're so aligned in our goals. And managing clients is, again, no different than managing teams. You've got multiple different personalities you need to manage and have set expectations from. How you get the best result from that is how you adapt and change to those people. And then again, having clients, you are responsible for contract value. So again, it's changing those numbers to a slightly different meaning, but you're still striving towards what I've always known. Your weekly sales, now it's just a quarterly sale and things like that. Targets are still in place. So I made the jump there through connections. Again, a past manager of mine went and worked for Connector, where I am, Connector Talent Technology. And he reached out to me and said, I think you'll be a great fit here, Zoe. Why don't you come along for a chat?
So that's almost three headhunts, isn't it?
Little old dyslexic Zoe.
But it is, right? So that's another form of headhunting, really, isn't it? And I'm guessing you took advantage of that. You felt it was right for you, and the rest is history.
And the rest is history.
And how long have you been here now?
2 years I've been there now. And honestly, it's very different from City and Guilds in terms of how we work and operate.
Yeah.
But for me, it's a breath of fresh air. So I truly feel I am in an environment where I can grow, thrive, feel trusted, and like it's a real team environment, which is where I thrive naturally in as well. I think if we go right back to the beginning where I second guess myself, am I good enough to do this? Connector, give me that safety net and allow me to be open and honest with how I'm feeling or what am I doing and sense checking, and they give me that belief and encouragement to go out and try and see that. And I really have started to see the success of what I'm doing there.
Do you feel you've really found your calling?
Absolutely.
And that's really nice, isn't it?
It is.
A number of different roles throughout your time, from younger than 16, but you've developed so many skills along the way, and it almost feels like you've reached the destination that is right for you. And I think that's so important for our listeners, that we might have a plan, and some of us might go from A to B and it's very straightforward, they execute it brilliantly. However, we're all different, and actually you've found your role that you feel is so right for you. Zoe, I just want to kind of pick up on a couple of things before we kind of then move to, some top tips for our listeners with regards to, how they can impress employers or university interviews, etc. You mentioned dyslexia. So just talk to me a little bit about kind of SEN and, where you're at with that. So I don't know much about dyslexia, and I would imagine a lot of our listeners don't. So what is that?
The The best way to describe dyslexia is that everything somebody says to you, you understand in your brain,
Yep.
but you can't translate it onto paper.
Okay.
So numbers and words will jump around. Reading is not a strength of ours. So, yeah, if you send me a massive email, I will just probably skim it, cherry pick things out. It's not digestible. And there are tools to help manage it. I would love any great tips from anybody else with how they manage it, because I wasn't diagnosed until I was 21. So I felt like I'd gone through most of my life.
Almost after university, right?
It was just as I was finishing in my final year.
Not ideal.
Not ideal.
No.
Didn't get any extra help with exams or understanding why. I always remember, exam season in the hall, and it was like, put your pens down when you finish. And I was always the last one, and it would panic me.
Yeah,
like,
and you're
why
aware
has
of that
everybody
around you,
else finished, and I'm still reading question 3 for the 5th time. I've had to read it because I'm not understanding it in my brain. But if somebody read me the question, I would have got it right away. I'm very much, I need to have a conversation to really understand it rather than it be written down.
And your roles have been working with people, conversating. So like you've played to your strengths.
Yes.
Would you say, when we think about barriers in your working life, would you say that has been a barrier? Could have been a barrier?
Well, yeah, it's definitely limited me.
Yeah.
I limited myself.
But you've been hugely successful, haven't you?
I have, and part of that is because I've been dyslexic, or I am dyslexic, and because of what I was told to believe. So what's interesting, we think my son might be dyslexic, and my daughter dyscalculia. So that's kind of dyslexia with numbers. And they have put tools in place already at primary school to help them. Yeah. So I'm very curious to know how they're going to turn out with their own determination, grit, work ethic and mindset. Because I had to go through that without it. And that built my resilience to how I react to situations. So I am very curious to know it will tell. If I'd known earlier, or you don't see it as a barrier because you don't know any different, but I never explored options because people had said to me, you can't do that because you can't spell.
Really interesting. Do you feel there have been any other barriers in your career that have been hard to overcome?
Well, I would put being a woman down to
talk to me about that.
A barrier. I feel that tide has definitely changed.
Female listeners, so
I feel
give me an example.
I feel like you have, in the past, I've had to work harder to get attention of senior people of what I'm doing is correct, what I'm doing is right, I am worthy of that job role.
Do you feel things have moved forward there?
Absolutely, 100%. Like, I really don't think that is a barrier for up and coming talent.
But has been.
And again, it was for me. Yeah.
So you have overcome a number of barriers to get where you are now.
Yes.
And actually become very successful in what you do. And I know we've spoken again off camera. I think you called Lichfield, you said Little Old Village or something like that. But I know you spend quite a lot of time in the Big Smoke now in London.
Yeah.
So this perhaps a quiet, shy, Zoe in Lichfield, 20 years later, 25 years later, is actually in the Big Smoke, dealing with huge contracts, looking after customers, and I would imagine has a lot of earning potential. So you've done really well, haven't you?
I like to think so, and I think a lot changed after having children. I think when I was little, going back to before you had limitations or everything was a possibility, I thought anything was possible. And then you go through this period of time of realization, or maybe not having enough encouragement and support and the tools around you to still believe that. And then after having a family, my mindset almost changed back to being that child again. And it's like, you have to fight now. You've got a family to provide for. Yeah. So how are you going to get to where you want to be? And that determination just almost, it's on fire now. It's like, I have to do this because it's not just about me anymore.
Zoe, you are transitioning seamlessly into my final question.
Oh,
really.
There you go.
You spoke about this grit, this determination. If we could say, let's give our our listeners 3 top tips, maybe 3, I don't know, skills that we're looking for if we're recruiting? Because I know you recruit staff now as well. You know, you're starting to build teams. What 3 skills would you say you're looking for in, you know, the next generation when you're considering recruiting for Connector?
Oh, brilliant. Well, I would always say be authentic, be your true self. We are bringing our true selves to work more and more every day now. And that adds value because your mind is so different. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. So be your authentic self. The other one is be brave as well. Don't hold back. I think it's important to have a leap of faith. If it feels right, say it. Be brave, be bold, because you don't know what you can achieve until you start doing it. And don't limit yourself. Don't box yourself in a mindset that you can't do it, because you absolutely can.
Zoe, that is fantastic. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom. Just to kind of wrap up, is it safe to say that 1, your career hasn't been linear?
True.
Yeah.
Yes.
And transferability of skills is absolutely crucial because you can transfer across a number of sectors.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that really is, you know, the message that we're trying to convey. And clearly you're a very good example of that. So, you know, I want to thank you so much for coming in. You've clearly been very honest and dug really deep there for us in terms of, you know, some things that are very personal to you. And we're very grateful for that. So we thank you for coming in. Really appreciate
for
the time.
having me. It's been great.
Did you want to give a shout out to your company? Anyone in particular? Or you?
Oh, thank you. If you want to learn more about us, you can go find us. It's Connector Talent Technology, or you can follow me on LinkedIn, Zoe Harrington.
Brilliant. Thank you, Zoe, and thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you all soon.